It's a nice day in February. I'm still healing from poison oak. Check this out, babies. Oh, it's so gross. Don't look at me. I'm hideous. So among the other things that we craft here, I make cold processed soap, and it's called cold processed soap because despite the fact that you are dealing with hot chemicals and oils, you don't apply heat to the process while you're actually mixing the soap. So I thought I'd give you a little overview of soap crafting in case that's something that interests you. So here's some basic ingredients that I use. Soap crafting is a combination of sodium hydroxide, which is lye, and oils. You can add in other things, but those two things are the basic ingredients to soap crafting. So I want to talk first about lye. Lye can be very dangerous to work with. You can get severe burns if you ingest it. You're going to end up in the hospital. So the thing about sodium hydroxide is you really don't want to have children crafting soap. There are fun projects you can do with kids where you basically reconstitute soap that's already been made. It's called a melt and pour, and you can put it into different molds, and it's fun. But when it comes to really making cold processed soap, you don't want to have kids work with lye. You have to get 100% lye. You can get it online. The other main ingredient is oils. Now you can use any kind of oil to make soap. And I've kind of whittled it down to 3 oils that I like working with. One is coconut oil. It's good for saponification, which means that's, what the process of making soap is. Gives good lather. You don't want it to be more than, say, 1/3 of your oils because it'll dry your skin. Then you've got olive oil. I'm using this right now because it's what I have. You don't need to use good olive oil. You can get pumice online. It's kind of the dregs of the olive oil, and it's wonderful for soap. And then any vegetable oil, but anything that's vegetable oil, if you look at the ingredients, it's going to say 100% soybean oil. So that's oils. You can use Crisco. I mean, you can literally use any kind of oils, but I have found that these 3 oils are wonderful. They make a good, consistent batch of soap. Then you have your additives. So obviously essential oils. If you're going to use essential oils in soap crafting, that's probably your most expensive ingredient. So I've got a number of different essential oils here, and I use those pretty much in every batch that I make. And then you have other additives. This is soy scrub. Good stuff. That's for a little exfoliation in your soap. This is olive leaf powder. That's good stuff. There's all kinds of stuff you can put in soap. I put coffee in it. Ground coffee. You can put all kinds of dried herbs. Don't put fresh herbs in your soap or it will rot, and nobody likes rotted soap. So those are the basic ingredients of soap crafting, and then we'll talk about the different types of equipment that you need to have to make soap. A couple other things I'd like to say about oils. You can make soap with just olive oil. It won't lather well. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is lather is excess product. You don't need lather to be clean. But people like it. So that's why we use the coconut oil. We use the palm oil. Those are ingredients that, give you that nice lather. But you don't want too much. All right, so here is a scale. This is an analog scale. I've used this for 20 years. Occasionally, I will buy digital scales because I think they're going to be more accurate or better somehow, but they're not. I mean, this is a tried and true scale. You'll see soap recipes that say, add in 4.2756 ounces of some ingredient, and that's just showing off. It's so unnecessary. What you're going to want: stainless steel pots and pans. I've got an old set my mom gave me in the 80s that I use only for soap craft. Make it stainless steel. Aluminum pans and pots will interact with your lye in not a positive way. So any old, you can go to yard sales and find these. but you want stainless steel pots. This is a 2-quart. I make a 2-pound batch every time I make soap. A 3-quart's better because you start mixing and it slops over the edge. Scoopers, ice cream scooper, great for scooping your oils. Palm oil and coconut oil will melt in the summer, freeze in the winter. Not freeze, but harden. You can see this is 76 melt, 76 degrees. This is going to become liquid. So it differs with different times of year. You'll find that every batch is different. Depending on what time of year it is, your humidity, there's all kinds of factors that can play into it. So, other basic things you're going to need. Candy thermometer. You need 2 of them. One for your oils, one for your lye water. You can see they're both Fahrenheit and centigrade. You need various spoons, measuring spoons. You need a really heavy-duty plastic, and they will crack in time, or a glass measuring cup to mix your lye in. What else? Spatulas come in handy. You can go to Dollar Tree and get good, cheap spatulas for soap crafting, and they're, I can't put that one back together. Pieces, parts. And they're really good for scraping soap out of your pans. The cheaper the better, I say. I had someone make me some tempered glass wands, so to speak, for mixing my lye water. Nothing affects these. They're difficult to break, and it's really pretty. Can you see that? You don't want to stick wood in your lye or in your soap that you're stirring after the lye is introduced to the oils, because you'll get wood in your soap, which you probably don't want. Like I said, you can use dried herbs. Don't use fresh herbs. And this I use to stir my oils. I don't know where I got it, and I cannot find another one anywhere online. I've been using this for 20 years. So if you find one, let me know where you found it, because I'd like to get a few more. So here you see 3 stainless steel pots with oil, ready to make soap. 8 ounces olive oil, 8 ounces coconut oil, 16 ounces soybean oil. I know oils can go rancid. I have been making soap for many years. Sometimes I've stored my oils for a long period of time, and I've never had that happen. I'm not saying that it doesn't. It just, for whatever reason, has not been my experience. So each of these is 32 ounces of oil. That makes 2 pounds of soap. So I'm going to cover each one up. I have also, a time or two, done this and then left one that I didn't use right away and found it weeks and weeks later and used it. It was fine. So there's your oils in stainless steel pots ready to go. Now we're going to do the lye. So I'm ready to pour my lye. You want to wear glovies. Do I always do that? No, I'm terrible. But when you're working with lye, I would really suggest gloves and a mask when you're pouring the lye into water. And I'll come back to that comment. So I've zeroed out my scale with my glass jar on it. One thing that's kind of helpful when you do this is to kind of knock on your table a little. You see how that adjusted my scale? I'm almost to 4 ounces. This particular recipe calls for 4.4 ounces of lye. Does it have to be exact? No. You know, I think about people who made lye centuries and centuries and centuries ago without all this equipment. Maybe they burned their skin a lot, but I'm thinking they figured it out. So we're at 4 ounces. I'm going to put in a little more. Now, the one thing I'll tell you about lye, too, we're about at 4.4 ounces. I don't care how dry a climate you live in, it will find moisture. If it gets inside your house on any surface, it will burn it. Any lye that you spill is going to react with moisture and make a burn in whatever surface you're using. So I would really suggest, if you can, working with your lye outdoors, both in measuring it and in pouring it into the water. When you do that, that's when you're going to need the mask, because the fumes can be pretty bad. So if you have to do this inside, well, the wind's kind of picking up here, I really suggest that you do it near an open window, and the fumes will definitely be a little overpowering. So I have my magic stirring wand. Here is my 4.4 ounces of lye right there. Always pour your lye into your water. Never pour your water into your lye. You could have yourself a volcano. You don't want that. One of the ways that makes it easier to remember this, so you start with a container with 12 ounces of water. If I haven't said that before, that's how much water you want for this batch, 12 ounces. Have it in a larger container than your lye. You would never pour your water into this. It wouldn't fit. So it's just a mental reminder of lye always goes into water. Having said that, let's pour. I usually do a little tap tap, get all my lye out. Got my magic wand and just stir. And you will feel granules on the bottom of your container. What you want to do, and here's the trick of Soapcrafting, is when, and this is how I do it, when my lye water gets down to 125 degrees, I'm going to start melting my oils. You can use a stove, you can use a hot plate, whatever you have. You know, if you're working outside, you can set up a little hot plate and use that. But at 125 degrees on my lye water, I start melting my oils. So you're going to let your lye sit a little while, 10 minutes. Stick a thermometer in it, see where you're at. It'll probably still be pretty high. Wait till it gets to 125 degrees Fahrenheit, and then you'll want to melt your oils. Later that same day, we had quite a windstorm outside. I had to stop for a little while and get our outdoors ready for a storm. But I've got my lye water here, and you can see that it's at, I don't know if you can see that, at the magic number, 125 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's about where I want my lye water. So here I've got my oils. Whoops. Show the oils. There we go. On the stove. So I'm going to go ahead and start heating those up. Not sure if I can do this with one hand, but I'm going to try. Move that back a little bit. Go, lit it. I want to turn it down fairly low. You don't want your flame up real hot. If it smells like you could fry chicken in it, you've gotten it way too hot. Now there is a trick. If your lye water is still in range, you can put your pot of oils in your freezer if it gets way too hot. So I'm going to keep stirring this until it's all melted, and then we'll mix, get the temperatures right, and mix them together. Alright, I've got my lye water and my oils at approximately the same temperature now, and they're ready to pour. They're about a little under 100 degrees, which is fine. So the lye water goes into the oil. Again, not the other way around. And certainly when you look at this, you know you couldn't pour your oils into this container. Some people pour them both in a different container. I don't. I go ahead and pour my lye water right into my oils. So pour, pour, pour. There you go. Beautiful. And there's all your basic ingredients for soap. You don't need another thing if you don't want it. So I'm going to stir a little bit by hand, and then I'm going to introduce you to my best friend in soap making, And that would be, dun, 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 an immersion wand.
Boy, I thought it was going to be me.
Oh, he's so disappointed. Okay, my second best friend.
Right.
Besides my dog. The immersion wand. These things are wonderful when you want to make soap in a reasonable period of time. It's sort of like the bread machine to hand making bread. And I've done it both ways for many years. But for me, if I'm going to craft 3 batches of soap at a time, I want to speed up the process. And this will do that. So I am going to plug this in, and I'll let you see what that looks like. After you've stirred with your immersion wand for approximately 30-45 seconds, you want to stop and check your viscosity. You know, see how thick it's getting. And what you're looking for is the magical thing called trace. So that if you drizzle some of your soap on the surface, you're going to see the line that it leaves. We're not quite there, so I'm going to use my immersion tool a little longer. So now you can see, after mixing perhaps another 30 seconds to a minute, you see the difference in the texture. Oh, it's so delicious. It looks like icing. Don't eat it. Do not lick the pan. So what I'm going to do at this point is put in my additives. And for this particular batch of soap, I'm using a tablespoon of spearmint essential oil, a tablespoon of tangerine essential oil. That's a nice combination. Some, oh, what was that? Some ground oatmeal that I ground previously, and some walnut shell powder. And the oatmeal and walnut shell powder, I'll use about a tablespoon of each. So I'm going to add that in and mix some more. And there what we have is an absolutely luscious batch of soap. Look at that. That's how you want it to look. Pretty thick. I don't like to pour too thin. Your ingredients can separate as your soap hardens. You don't want that. So for this batch, I am using one of my wood box molds. I have lined it with wax paper. It doesn't really matter what it looks like in the bottom because it's all going to get smushed down by the soap. But I'm going to pour my soap into here. The wax paper enables you to more easily remove the soap from the mold. There are other types of molds that you can use. My favorite plastic molds are Milky Way. They hold up well. Some of these molds I've had for a long time. You can see this one is a single pour. It's kind of like pouring a cake, where you do one pour and then cut them apart later. And then here's one that's individual wells. You can see they're froggies. So those pop out easily. If they don't, stick them in the freezer for about 30 minutes and then have them pop out. It's kind of hard on your plastic molds, but sometimes there's nothing else for it. So here is all the soap I crafted today in all its glory. You can see a couple of single pours, a few multi pours, and then my wax paper lined wooden box. You can use yogurt tubs, you know, just anything that can withstand the heat, since you're pouring in liquids that are at about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So you don't want something that's going to melt, but all kinds of things will work. So that is Soapcrafting 101 in a nutshell. A couple things I didn't mention. For instance, a lot of people use lard in soap crafting. I don't. I'm a vegetarian. I don't really like working with animal products. The only ones I've used are beeswax and honey. Beeswax is kind of a pain to work with, but it's nice in your product. The other thing is I order most of my supplies through an online company called Wholesale Supplies Plus. Good prices and free shipping, and I don't shop online unless I get free shipping. So yeah, it's not for everyone. I find it very enjoyable, and I'll do a little additional video after I pop my soaps out of their molds. You want to leave your soap in molds for 24 to 48 hours. As I mentioned, if you have difficulty getting them out of your molds, pop them in the freezer for half an hour to an hour, and they'll usually come out without a problem. Cut up the ones that need to be cut and let them sit for 4 to 8 weeks to cure. General rule of thumb is the longer they sit, the harder they get. So I hope you enjoyed that, and see you soon.